the term thick client. And I was like, what are you people talking about? And as an American Southerner, my brain went very left as a child of Sir Mix-a-Lot.
I like big computers and I cannot lie.
Yeah, that's where I was at. I was like, wait, hold up. What's going on here? Like, the secret to AI is context. The internet gave me what I felt like was superpowers. And now at 2 years from 40, I'm like, the internet has made you all dumber. What's going on here? Like, I thought access to all of the free world of knowledge would do wonders for the planet. And I'm like, that is not what happened. Brain rot. The youngins call it brain rot. Do not give me turkey bacon. I want real bacon. Dude, you sound like a boomer right now. I'm like, hey, my name is Jerome Hardaway. I am the director of counter-misinformation and disinformation at Civic Influencers, where I use AI, psy-ops, and data engineering to be able to help 18 and 29-year-olds be able to see what is honest on the internet. One of the things the biggest problems that I'm solving with AI is trying to, as a millennial, is very funny. I'm in the middle of where I have to protect both my parents and my kids from the internet, because my parents will send money to a Nigerian print scam, and my kids will absolutely get kidnapped for some Fortnite skins. And it's insane how on both sides of the spectrum misinformation and disinformation is, and how somehow millennials are pretty much the only demographic in America that's kind of insulated from the internet misinfo, disinfo. Like, we grew up during an era of to this stuff, so we know how to spot all the fake stuff and all the lies. It's crazy. It's bananas. I tell people, like, it's stressful. It's really stressful.
We were the kind of the first people on the internet, and so we saw the attractive singles in your area scams. We saw the Nigerian print scams. A lot of these email scams came through. We've seen them, we know about them, we have jokes about them. And as you say, our parents' generation, they didn't. I mean, my parents have been scammed by their phone call from Microsoft. Luckily, they checked with me, being a tech person, and nothing bad happened. But it does happen. And then, as you say, the younger generation, they're such digital natives. They haven't been through that. And the way that folks are trying to scam them, confuse them, provide this as disinformation,
It's very different, right?
very different. It's very subtle. It's very well engineered. And so they've got this kind of economy of scale almost behind it. They can slowly nudge people over time towards a certain perspective.
That is such important. Like, in my role, it's so funny because I'm a veteran, my LinkedIn tends to skew a little more right, but I'm left leaning. And when I say these things that I'm finding using AI, like, I have found conservative indoctrination programs to start at age 5. And I was like, because I use artificial intelligence, and one of the things with sentiment analysis is deception detection, right? And as a subset of deception detection, I was thinking, maybe if I treat this like an argument with a person where you're actually projecting the thing you're doing on the person, we can find other things. So I created within my models, I created another layer called projection detection. So if deception was detected, the next step was to look for projection and see if this party or this entity was doing what it was accusing or stating that the other party was doing. And what I found was, I'm finding private school programs, high school comics. I'm finding all types of things, and I'm like, they're talking. We have one side of the fence talking about drag queens reading, stories to kids in libraries, and I'm like, I didn't know that there were coloring books for kids with misinformation, disinformation, essentially vilifying whole groups of people that start as early as like 5. And I was like, that is wild. How is that happening? And how come no one on the news is talking about it, or influencers aren't talking about it? So that's where my work comes into play. I focus on using AI, psy-ops, and data engineering to identify these trends that focus on targeting 18 to 29-year-olds when it comes to misinformation, disinformation, and try to get counter programming from other like-minded influencers that are under the guise of similar to how their networks are when it comes to, oh, this person's in gaming or this person's in MMA or something. Those people who are also on those and get the right programming to them, the facts, right? And I'm also looking and building real-time analytics, all types of stuff. So that's where my work really lives, is trying to really protect 18 to 29-year-olds, because 80% of them do not watch the news. They get all their information from TikTok, Reels, Twitter, Blue Sky, whatever you want to call it. But Reddit, they don't get it from what we consider reputable news sources. They want to be able to relate to the person first through common interest, then talk about the things that matter. Whereas, Rachel Maddow, I don't know anything about her. I just know she's reputable, and that's it. Right. So that's all I need to know to be able to believe her, that she is a vetted, reputable resource on MSNBC. 18 to 9-year-olds, that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for the person that likes the type of video games they like, or are doing the same things, like, cooking the same foods or showing them new things that they like, and then talking about issues that matter. So that's like the current uphill battle that we're fighting, at least in America. Right now, my work is in America. I'm talking to some British partners. I just had a very funny conversation today with some partners in the UK. It was because I had never heard the term in 10 years of working in software engineering, the term thick client. And I was like, what are you people talking about? And as an American Southerner, my brain went very left as a child of Sir Mix-a-Lot. I was like, I grew up my brain was like, when did this conversation become unprofessional, and how do I stay out of trouble when it's called? And then they could see it on my face, and I was like, oh, that's what y'all meant, because they were like asked me, and I was like, that's not what we don't use the term thick in the South the way y'all clearly use the term over
I like
there.
big computers and I cannot lie.
Yeah, that's where I was at. I was like, wait, hold up, what's going on here? Like, who are these people? What? Like, I don't know what to say, and then I'm lost. So this whole conversation has went left for me, and I'm just trying not to get fired at this point. Uh,
So that actually brings up kind of an interesting point then. When we think about the different language people use, you're obviously you are millennial. I'm more, slightly older than millennial.
well,
Gen
you're like
X.
Gen X. You're
I'm
Gen
Gen
X,
X.
which is not
Um,
Boomer, right? Like,
Yeah, I'm
you're
not quite
not.
boom. I'm Gen X, but yeah, again, we have certain understandings of language. You say with certain respect for news because that's how we're brought up, and then you have the younger generation who have a different set of language. How do you manage the understanding of this language? So when we think about disinformation, we're thinking about how people are putting across certain viewpoints, how they're doing it very subtly, how they're kind of nudging people towards it. The language they use is very different to the language we use. So does AI understand? I mean, thick is obviously one thing, and if we have these videos that say certain political view is skibbity toilet or whatever it is the young people are saying, how much is just the understanding of the language and the use of language at different age groups make your job hard? And how does AI help with that?
Well, it doesn't really. AI is actually really good with the sentiment analysis. It doesn't, like, the secret to AI is context, right? Like, that's when you're leveraging AI and stuff. And you just can't. If I put skibbity or uh, cringe or chuggy in there by itself and didn't give it any context of how it was used, yeah, AI would be like me, like, yo, get off my lawn. I don't know what you're talking about. Go somewhere. Uh, but then when you put it in, you feed it data, you feed it multiple sources of context of how this is used. Oh, this is what this means. Oh, true gaming is trash, or cringe means, oh, this is awful. Like, this is how they're using it. Like, or this is like a very bad take on something. So like that is how with AI, that's how it is. It's all about the data that you're feeding it um, that goes with like how to really, build that context, that data warehouse, so to speak. So that, just that toolkit, right? So with my work, for instance, a great thing that I look at is I get to look at districts that are they're in a state of flux where they're very, very tight races. And then I can see just how, 18 and 29-year-olds would have like flipped that race if they had truthful information, right? And there are some races in America that literally 0.13%, 0.007%, 0.004%, where, oh, guess what? If 50 people would have showed up, that district would have looked different. But these people either stayed at home or they were fed misinformation. And then you can look in the region, especially, and it's so weird how tech companies are with this. The amount of information I can get for giving ads, spending like $100 on ads on TikTok versus the amount of information I can get as a researcher, like in TikTok, is totally different, to the point where like going and trying to get to the research programs is kind of useless, right? Because I get more information because they're assuming I'm going to spend more money to get more information so that I can sell things. So just being able to find out, okay, who are the biggest influencers in this tiny little district, and then going through those people's social media and their data and being like, oh, so this is the stuff they're saying. All right, let's see, what is there anything that they're saying that can be picked up as misinformation or disinformation. Now, the difference between misinformation and disinformation is that misinformation is not intentional, right? So we can help with misinformation a lot easier than disinformation, right? Disinformation is a harder tool to attack because those people are usually more aggressive, more abrasive. So you have to match that energy when it comes to it. But um, that is one of the things, like, is this person misinformed, and are they sharing misinformation versus an intentional, disinformation type thing, right? Like a great example of disinformation would be Project 2025, right? Like, oh, someone says that they don't know what it is, but then 3 months later, 80% of the things that they're in it, or 30% of the things that are in it are being implemented. That's a very different conversation than we're having now. Or, another great, tariffs, right? Everybody who's over 35 knows that tariffs are expensive because you've lived through a recession, you've lived through that type of stuff. You know that tariffs aren't a good thing when you're talking about a global economy. When we saw the spike only after the election here of tariffs, and we were like, so the kids only started looking at tariffs after they knew it would be a reality. That's very weird, right? Because their social media was saying that, oh, tariffs aren't a big deal. 18 to 29-year-olds, the network, the Island Boys and Theo Vaughn and all those guys, they were not pressing on it, right? Even though they're also in a different financial situation where the cost of eggs is not going to drive them crazy. But turning around and being like, oh, these guys who did not really talk about this didn't really educate their audience base. And then, they blame the audience base. That was another thing that we saw, was that the people that were doing disinformation and misinformation, when you brought it up to the people that were intentionally doing that, what they did was they said, it's your fault. You should do the research. And it was like, that is weird. But so, and then I'm just telling you, like, mind you, I've been at this since January and it's been a wildest ride. I talked to an influencer about that, and they said not only is it their fault, they did not agree with technologies or AI in particular helping educate the demographic in real time because it's their responsibility to know. But it's like, but it's your responsibility to not hurt, not to use trust to give disinformation. But they were like, no, it's not. My responsibility is to get views. My responsibility is to turn this what I'm doing into a thing that can support my family, right? Like, and that's the one thing people don't see on the screen. A lot of these people, they're just doing things because this is somebody got to pay for church camp for their daughters. So it's very weird, like how my world is very weird. It's talking to people, then looking at AI, and then trying to figure out how to solve the solution. Looking at maps, pulling so much data. I pull data from MIT. I'm getting data from every state. I'm going through all of the social media data. I've learned new terms that didn't even matter to me like 3 months ago, such as social listening. That is a mark. I know what social listening was. That's like a marketing term. But now I'm dealing with in this space, and I'm like, oh, social listening is uh, figuring out what's being said, and then now I'm pouring social listening into AI and leveraging AI models to see to grade to score it because I'm not an educator, so I can't say grade. So score it. It's a very like language is weird, man. Like I have to score it based upon the behavioral analysis and the truthiness, like literally being one thing that I've done in a recent month and a half is that I've taken resources that were published from the CIA and resources that were published and trained on by the Navy for internet warfare, and I've had to train artificial intelligence on those to be able to see, in regards to psy-ops and social engineering, what's being done, what's being said on video, the human interactions that can be tracked, like like it's my world is bananas right now. The things that I've had to do is like now I learned about Overton windows. I didn't know what an Overton window was until like maybe 3 months ago. And so like I tell people like I don't I, the that's another reason I took this role though, right? Like was being able to see to leverage software engineering, AI engineering, big data to see how we can truly help our youth, help our kids to protect themselves from, bad actors who, have other intentions than telling them the truth is to me very important work because I have four boys and three of the four are either adults or about to become an adult in a very, very soon time frame. So like it's very important for me to see how to protect them from a world that may not want them to be protected in the same ways that as a millennial, kind of had to learn on my own about that.
It's a very kind of wide-ranging thing of what you're trying to do here, because I mean, just trying to unpack everything that you just said. There's a lot there. So you're kind of doing everything from looking at how, like, the CIA, for example, would literally try and use propaganda, for want of a better expression, because obviously, in the past, CIA and many other countries have used propaganda to overthrow governments.
MI6, MI7, yeah.
All that kind of stuff. And that's influencing people to do things. So obviously that was very intentional at a political level of we want to introduce change in another country. But then you're mixing that. Then you're looking at the similar kind of practices being done by people who are not doing it because they intentionally want to be bad people. They're doing it because they don't care enough about the impact of what they're doing, but they do care about the dollar value because it's just a job. You know, lot we could unpack with that. Not sure I want to go to that space right now.
Whole nother conversation.
There has been courts that have ruled it's just a job, it's not protection. But yeah, and so it's people are avoiding talking about these topics, and what you're trying to do really is give people is to identify these areas, identify places where this is deliberately happening, or people just don't have the right resources. Yeah, and that's a huge amount of data. And so this is where AI comes in, doesn't it? Because AI is so powerful over structured data. So you're literally trying to build these models across all of this massive amount of information. And this is a huge, huge set, and help to identify those places where the misinformation is happening. So you can then feed in the correct information.
Or train people who are also in that area, right? Because that's one of the things that we learn when we start applying the CIA, because one of the reasons why I started looking into say CIA stuff was because I was prior military, so I understand psyops. I understand these type of operations that focus on changing, the hearts and minds. So we call that soft power in the United States military, right? Instead of you can think about it like the Lioness program before it was a very like aggressive clandestine program. It was initially just people getting women doctors to women in Iraq and Afghanistan and protecting them. And then those women were giving those doctors intelligence, not thinking that it mattered because of our cultural differences and it being fed back to us, right? So like that was the Lioness program. That's a great opportunity that early on. That was a great showcase of soft power, right? Providing health care, people just talking shop in their native tongues. Next thing you know, they let something slip about, a gentleman that, is planning about, not gentleman, and sergeant that's planning, to do some nefarious work. That is a great example of soft power and psyops. So we're seeing this done internally in Western civilizations where, hey, your favorite MMA commentator has a talk show or a podcast, and he's also sharing these, he's doing this little trickle down stuff as well. And he's been trained by someone to how to work these in, right? Like, they're at, they have 3,500 locations in colleges where they have these chapters where they train them how to do this for the 18-29 demographics. They have clubs that they can showcase how to start a club at your high school. They have how to do it in middle school. They have private schools, where they're talking about the 5 C's that can get your school some funding based upon teaching this. They have kindergarten programs. They have comic books, coloring books, all this stuff, right? So going through that type of like stuff and like, oh, all right, this is happening here. But the problem is the people who have this type of skills, i.e., me, with a mixture of AI and like, they usually aren't in the same room, and they aren't usually, have the same skill set. So it was a very rare opportunity for me to come in and be like, hey, okay, what can I do? Because and these conversations started like literally after the November election in America. It was very much like, hey, we need to figure this out. What we're doing isn't working. And then all you have to do is pull up the data. And me, I'm thinking, oh, well, it's very clear. And they're like, it's not clear to us. We're 60. What are you talking about? How did you know that within 2 days? I was like, oh, my bad. So that's one of the things. Like I'm also having to educate how to see these signs and things.
I guess the education part is quite important because there is, for example, in the US, there's one news channel which I think justified them calling themselves news because they even said that no sane person is going to believe we are actually news. They realize we're an entertainment show. But there are people who listen to that. Yeah, I overheard a conversation in a coffee shop this morning where it's obvious people have picked up talking points from this kind of media, and they're saying things that, with a small amount of research, you can tell they're blatantly untrue, but that's what they are believing.
That's a word that we have to fight. Is research. People already doing research. They're making their opinion based upon the opinion or the information they're getting from people they trust. And one of the things that we keep saying, people keep saying, "I've done the research." Well, no, you didn't. A you read a blog post or you listen to a podcast with somebody you like, right? That's not research. So that's one thing I keep trying to say. Can we change that? No, we can't change that language. I wish we could. Like people like it's crazy. It's insane. But yeah, what you're saying definitely resonates. It's definitely something that we're seeing across everything, and particularly with 18-29-year-olds. It's dangerous, right? It's the most dangerous thing that we've seen, and from looking at data from the pandemic to how being so online and being in those bubbles, and it's just it's so much work that has to be done. And it's as a software engineer, it makes me, as a person that wasn't a software engineer or didn't know anything about software engineering when I was young, and then like started picking it up when I was like 20, I think 25, 26, started being interested in coding. It's hilarious to me as a millennial because I'm like, the internet gave me what I felt like was superpowers. And now at almost 2 years from 40, I'm like, the internet has made you all dumber. What's going on here? Like, I thought access to all of the free world of knowledge would do wonders for the planet. And I'm like, that is not what happened.
These kids aren't really taught necessarily to dive into this knowledge because it's there. It's easy to go, yeah, I've watched this video, I believe it. I mean, I remember doing history back at like GCSE level, which is the exams you do when you're 16 in the UK. And we were taught, do not trust anything. Here is a load of sources that we've got. Be aware that most of the sources are written by the victors. History is always written by the winners. So look across different sources. What things can you pick out that are the same across all these different sources? What things would obviously be written by the winners? You know, it's that, are you a terrorist or a freedom fighter? You know, it's, I know this is not kind of that thing, the winners are the freedom fighters, the losers are the terrorists. Yeah, it's this kind of good trouble idea. But so can you kind of come up with what you think actually is the truth, in as much as you can tell based off all these different sources that very much agree, very much disagree, and some of these sources are written by the bad people, some of these sources are written by the good people. You know, I mean, we were doing like World War II, for example, and we were looking at materials created by the Nazi Party and materials created by the Allies, because you need both to try and get some kind of truth out of it. And
That is beautiful. That's exactly a lot of what I do, because in America, what is different is like the victors don't always write the story. Sometimes the people that were on the losing side and the victors are trying to coalesce also get a part of the storytelling in order to try to, make it safer, make it, a little more less fearful, or make it easier to get along, right? Like America's very like that. Um, One of the things that we saw in particular is how, in or what I've seen is how some books are rewriting slavery in America as like forceful immigration and things of that nature. And I'm like, that's one way to say that, but that's not what, just call it what it is, because they're more concerned of how they're more concerned how it can be viewed, keeping people in power from looking bad. And it's very, we have to take both sides of the story, and to add all the context, but we have to get to the create a single source of truth, and calling it what it is, power, and that's something that people don't really want to do. And going through, like I said, going through these type of resources, doing this type of research, looking at the big data of this, and seeing how it's being matriculated, to younger and younger and younger ages, it makes this work. That's why I don't tell people, everyone, about my work, because I'm like, hey, it is very, like, it's wild how a lot of this looks like, psyops, and essentially uh, just tactical intelligence warfare. This looks more like a intelligence ran situation than anything else, and leveraging AI to be like, hey, so when I use AI to target a small area in South Carolina, or target an area in Colorado, which is very tight race, and then I look at how, and Colorado is my favorite state to look at because it's purple. So when I look at the margins of how information and disinformation, misinformation, and influencers swings those type of votes and conversations among 18 and 29, and I look at the male demographic and the women demographic, and then I look at how that's being played out post-election and pre-election, and how it's still being played out to things like, even one of my current favorite stories of AI, using AI and looking at the sentiment analysis, behavioral analysis, is there's a show on Netflix called Love is Blind. The five couples, only one couple moved forward, but had the other four couples that didn't move forward, two of those couples were directly aligned um, to how the men were more quote unquote traditionalist, more conservative, and the women were like not down with that, and how that led to like spikes of conversation in that area, and particularly among 18 to 29-year-olds at those colleges. And like this area was very unique to me because like they had colleges, trade schools, military installations, not that far from military, from Air Force Academy, all that stuff, right? So not that far from like within 100 miles of Space Force at HQ at the time. I don't know if they changed it or not yet, but all of this information, like when you're looking at 18 and 29-year-olds, you're like, the spike that was happening, the conversation is like, oh, men should be able to hide this part of their conversation mentality until the woman falls in love with them. All this wild stuff, and I was just like, this is very interesting to just watch the kids argue in a graph. And I just like it's very important, like how that like looks and how like how do we solve this discourse and how do we fix this thing?
It's interesting you're going to say this because then you've got this idea of just popular media that's not even trying to be a political show. It's a reality TV show. It's designed to get people crying over the sentimentality of it, and my wife loves that show, and she will debate with her friends whether some decision should be made about a particular person, and it's even she describes it as trash TV.
Brain rot. The youngins call it brain rot.
Yeah, but this is actually influencing people's opinions on what are political or even human rights issues. In some ways,
Or real world situation. Like, my love for data engineering came from Dataclysm because of OK Cupid writing the CEO of OK Cupid talking about all this stuff about dating and that he learned from big data engineering. Some of my favorite things to read is like, relationships when it comes to data engineering. And like that spike, it was like a 1 week, 2 week spike of information, so much information coming from one small district, and how it became such a politically charged conversation was like, wow, this is just so intriguing, right? And then when you start going into sentiment analysis and the behavioral analysis of things, of how people believe they should be able to either keep secrets or lie, frankly, if that lie hurts them from finding a partner, and how that was a shift between genders. Like women were like, no, I do not come to this date waiting for me to fall in love with you before you let me know that you trash on a subject that's important to me. And men were like, I reserve the right to not tell you that till you make a bad decision. And I was like, that is a very interesting thing. That's probably, if you look at all of human history, it's probably the old as time, but we never had big data to tell us like how men are truly from Mars and women are from Venus.
you've got the data to prove that men lie to get dates.
To get girls, yeah.
It's kind of we've known this for years, and I mean, I grew up as a young man, and I've had to unlearn a lot of things that were normal, and I'm like everyone of my age, I'm horrified by my younger self because the things you do is what's considered normal, and that's not right, and just I guess putting that message across that what you think is normal is to lie, cheat, and hide is not actually the right thing to do. And look at these people who are getting the consequences of it. Misinformation again, isn't it?
Yes, it's misinformation or the misinformation. Right now, the subject that I'm really focusing on this week is the misinformation and disinformation of masculinity. Right. So a lot of things that talk about being masculine aren't truly masculine. And I'm like, because, women do jujitsu, women box, women, shoot firearms, women do everything that, men do that men turn to turn masculine. They can earn high wages, everything. So where is the differentiation that we're really calling? When we analyze acts, what are we calling masculine acts, just in you know theory, just in thought provokingness? And what we like what I've started to be able to dwindle down now, to dwindle down the like rabbit hole and start learning more things, it's like when we look at social media, particularly, very in particular when it comes to young men, because that's one of the most polarizing across the globe. The manosphere is the most polarizing area. Uh, what we think or what is being marketed as masculinity is actually just being a guy and being cruel. And that's what we've been looking at, and we've been like, how do I fix this? How do we can target it all we want to, but how do we make it better? How do we make these changes necessary for people, right? Because I have four boys. I am and three boy dogs. I am tired all the time because I am trying my best to make sure that they do not leave my house as messed up little monsters for society to deal with. That is, I feel like that is your whole job as a parent. Just don't, procreate and put little demons on this planet. But yeah, so when I'm thinking about like having these conversations with them, and I have these conversations with their friends, and then I looking at the data, I'm like, how do we fix this world where, in the end, what makes this thing more believable is, this person who is, you know, back in my boxing, kickboxing days, we called it your boxing lemons or boxing, hams, like, padded fight records, smoking cigars on the internet, but because he has muscles and abs, they want to be like him. And it's like, you don't have to do that to have muscles and abs. There are tons of fit people that are not jerks. And just trying to like educate them, like that is the hardest part, is trying to find authentic ways to leverage, to show them things. And like we are identifying the problems, but now the current phase that we're working on is how, now that we have identified them, how do we uh amplify how do we quickly amplify it to the manner where it doesn't have detriment onto our youth, because that's where we are right now. We're at a point where we're having to use AI to be able to um, identify and see the bubble, see the cycles, and see where they intersect, right? Like see where Island Boys meet Joe Rogan, where Joe Rogan meets Andrew Tate, where Andrew Tate meets Theo Vaughn, where Theo Vaughn meets Charlemagne, and like where does that cycle leaves these young men when it comes uh, to the data to like formulate and solidify very bad behaviors, or very like as kids to say, that cringe or behaviors. And we're like, where's the secret sauce in this, and who are the people that can compete against this? And that's like the right now, I think that's the $17 million question, because I do remember the DNC said, coming to me and being like, "We have one person we have been trying to find a person who can counter these type of conversations, who we could trust and control, and there is not one man in America that hits all the demographic points countering it now." And I was like, "That's wild. One, you're trying to control them. You can't do that with influencers because." They have to. You're leveraging their trust of their people. Two, the fact that there is not one American male that can that has a huge following when it comes to masculinity in America, that when we look at the data can be used to truthfully counter these other narratives, was like the closest we found was like a Canadian in America. Like we literally would find people, and it was like either they were afraid to do it because they saw what happened to Dwayne Johnson when he endorsed Biden. They saw what happened to his money, or they don't want nothing to do with it, so they don't want anything to do with it, or they do, and then they're like, "Oh, you're not even an American. You're like from Nova Scotia, living in America." Like we need somebody that is born and raised here for like to share that you too can have these similar experiences and still think like this. And that is that was a very for me was a wake up call when I was hearing these conversations, because I was at Microsoft having these conversations outside of work, and I was like, yeah, well, you're not using tech correctly. You're not using AI correctly. You have all this data, and you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing with this data. Like, you have all these Excel sheets, and you're not doing what you should be doing with, which is also what, like, the scariest part of my job, because I literally learned how to. I learned about databases, so I could not have to learn. Like, use Excel. Like, I literally learned Postgres to not use Excel. And then you deal in like civic tech, and all these people use is Excel. All they use is, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, so
I used to work in banking years ago, and the entire global financial system runs on Excel spreadsheets called, report 17 underscore final underscore V3, and it's hidden in someone's machine somewhere. It's scary.
it's wild how so much of America, so much of the world is on an Excel spreadsheet. Like, Excel is literally, forget what you know about code. Excel is literally the most important like thing to learn, and I should have learned it. And now, but I know enough Python where I could just convert it to what I want to do now. Like, so that works. I have enough Python and D3JS skills to change things, but I'm just like, you all spend your entire lives looking at Excel spreadsheets. That's bananas. Um,
There's people who know data and don't necessarily know technology, and Excel is kind of it's the place
in
that
the
makes.
middle.
Yes. It sounds like obviously there's this huge problem with trying to find those voices. So, how does AI help someone? I mean, I have a 12-year-old, for example, and if they wanted to learn more about tariffs, and they obviously they could ask me, and we could have a adult conversation about it. But if they decided I want to go on the internet and learn more, how do you build these AI tools that can help kids learn things? Because there already is bias in AI. We already know that AI makes things up, and if you're getting an AI tool from a certain company, there is always that question of how is that trained? We've seen AIs from countries where they've suppressed certain piece of information. You ask DeepSeek about Tiananmen Square, you're not going to get a response. So how do you get good AI tools that are trusted and that kids can use to get a balanced, honest viewpoint? I mean, that's obviously diving into what is the truth is a completely separate issue. But yeah, how do you get these tools to?
I don't think it's about tooling. I think it's about embedding, right? I do not want to build a tool. I want to find a way to, when you, the 18 and 29-year-old, see something and it is immediately flagged. Like, if you're on TikTok, I want to be able to, everything out, like, think of it like an overlay, right? You know how you go to a website and an overlay pop-up screen happens, right? Immediately for a CTA or something, or you know what? You are the age. So you're also a nerd. So because I was looking at this, I was like, wait, no, he has Star Wars stuff, so he definitely might know this. Dragon Ball Z. Have you ever watched Dragon Ball Z?
I have not. I never really got into the whole kind of anime thing, so I have not watched Dragon Ball Z. No,
10
sorry.
points lost for Gryffindor, but it's cool.
Sorry, I failed. I failed you. I'm sorry.
So in Dragon Ball Z, the Saiyans, they have a scouter, and it gives you like the power levels and things of that, right? So all the kids, they're familiar with that, because Dragon Ball Z is like the first big anime. It was literally Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, first two big animes in America. Um, so think of it like having that type of overlay where if you're watching something from an influencer, it doesn't matter, and this subject comes up, like, there's a overlay or something that showcases, hey, misinformation has been detected. This is what this really means. If you want to learn more about it, you go check out these type of reputable sites that are from your government or from history, like all these vetted sites. Or if you want to hear someone talk about it, here's a here are people that are scored higher, right? Or what if we did that automatically? Yes, you could definitely listen to that dude, but when the algorithm notices that, hey, yo, you're getting, which is part of the problem, right? The algorithm wants you to stay on longer than it wants you to be a good citizen. It doesn't want you to be a good citizen. It just wants you to stay on TikTok as long as possible. So how do I keep it engaged around the things that you already care about while also educating you about something that you just got some misinformation about, right? Like if you like Marvel Rivals and Marvel Rivals do while gaming's talking about, how tariffs are fine and stuff. Well, the next Marvel Rivals video should probably have someone that's a little more knowledgeable that or has been trained on these things to actually be able to, give you real concrete evidence on that. Or you should be able to see, a warning that like there has been information detected on this post in regards to this, right? And that as well as we build incentives on the back end for influencers to be like, hey, yo, the more honest you are, the higher you're going to go up in the algorithm, right? Like you could be conservative, who cares? As long as you're telling the truth, right? So if you're telling the truth and it's vetted as truthiness, you get scored higher. That's more money. That's more eyeballs, which helps gets more deals. Because that's where you're really looking at is the deals. The deals that helps you pay the bills, right? So if we get to that type of component of like, hey, I don't care where your alliance is. I just care about the misinformation and disinformation. And we can score it and we can derank or up. And that's where a lot of these battles have been. They're like, oh, you're favoring, this side over this side. Well, no, we're ranking truthiness, right? We're not ranking like, all right, we could take the same subject, put in the facts, and this will get deranked because this is proven fact. This is an opinion, right? And, it's very you know, very important, and particularly with kids, because I just had a conversation with a fitness influencer today about Shein, and I was like, so has like anything been different in regards to how when you're ordering from Shein or Shein, Shein, however they say it, uh, how has that been since this like 2020 and 2025 from like 2024, 2023, etc. Like it is very I have seen an uptick on my prices when I order. And in one I saw one post which had a from Nike where a young woman um her package had like 20 was turned 20-30% more, and she was like looking at everything, and she's like, they just stuck in this price because some of this stuff's made in China. Like, what's going on? Why am I getting hit with this? Because she saw social media was a big deal, learning the hard way, and that is one of those things that we're constantly and consistently like fighting in America. These are like great examples. So for you, back to yours, it's not so much as you sending them somewhere; it's us finding a way to organically have that happen while they're doing. Because that's not how they're not researching it. Like you're your dad. I when I want to know something explicitly, I ask you. But how I even learned what tariffs was I was watching some dude who was doing my favorite custom builds of these because I know they got like expensive versions of this now, especially by looking at the back of your screen. This custom build, like this $10,000 Lego set or something like that, and I watched those on TikTok, and then I was just that dude brought up tariffs, so I asked Dad. But I'm still gonna be watching these other things, and if someone's talking about tariffs, like how expensive tariffs have gotten, how many expensive Legos have gotten since this new thing, like or young woman, for instance, she does a lot of baking stuff. She was talking about how expensive eggs have gotten, how hard how the cost of producing her specialized cookies that are like they're flipping gorgeous. I almost swore right there. I'm working on it. Like as a military veteran, I speak in f bombs and acronyms, and I am working very hard to not do that. So like her sharing that story made it more authentic because they're like because she's talking how it's impacting the things that she shares with the people it impacts how she shares her craft with people. And they're like, well, I don't if it's impacting how you share with us like these crazy cool cookies, I don't really like that because I like your cookies. it's the same thing with the tariffs. Like if it's impacting, how hard it is for you to get, the specific type of Legos that you need from Germany in order to come over here so you could build this, lifestyle Elvis. I want to say Elvis because I'm from Memphis, and that's the only thing because I could think of it would cost $10,000 at least to make with Legos. So I was like, so if you're having it harder to export this, or it's more expensive to export these type of pieces, so you can make the Elvis hair cowlick, then we need like, all right, well now I want to know more about tariffs. Now I'm going to go to an expert because the things I care about are being impacted. One of the things we forget as we become older is that 18 to 29-year-olds are kind of selfish because they're trying to figure things out. They're very self-centered because they don't know anything. They're trying to figure out, what should I know? Who am I? What is my identity? What do I believe? So they're very self-centered, but they're also very impressionable. So we have to start where they're at instead of like look down at them and be like, you need to come up here, right? And that's how I would approach the whole tariff process, right? It's not so much as let's go and point them towards like other boring, texts where they don't even read like that. So, except if it's anime with subtitles, let's go to, making sure that the people that, the things they care about are also informed on these things so they can talk to them about it, right? Because they already have that trust that, you know, I kind of don't, and like my trust with my kids is kind of dictated. Like I have fed you for the past 18 years, so like you have to trust me, or you live in my house, or you have to trust me. Versus this person just likes NBA 2K like I do. So what is this person's thoughts on this, and what is the other person's thoughts on this? Like that's how what we've seen when it comes to 18, 29-year-olds, this rabbit hole goes because they're they have computers in their phones since like four, right? Like the average 18-year-old's first time touching a device was a cell phone was like six, or an iPad was like four or five, right? So that is the thought process that we have to get when we're trying to protect them. It's not so much like AI helps us identify it, but then we have to start with the organic process of it. And that's where the hard part comes because I can give you an entire report and an entire dossier of all the other this 100-page dossier of everything that I found when it comes to misinformation, disinformation. All of these sources show. I can put on a website for you with graphs, everything. You would grok that. I could literally put my 18-year-old in front of the same screen with that on. They would walk away halfway through. Like they would be like, "I'm not reading this, Dad. Like it doesn't like this is my kid. They would not read my work because it's like this is trash, dude. Like it's so much stuff that I don't care about going on. Like I don't like this feels like schoolwork. I don't want to do this.
But if you had an influencer that they trust and believe in, essentially say the same things, maybe not here's a 100-page report, but kind of give that summary while doing some kind of dance move or whatever it is the cool kids do on TikTok these days, they're going to listen to that because, as you say, they've got that trust based off you like the things I like. I like watching you for entertainment. I trust you. So it's converting all that information the AI generates this information. So we think about the AI as a tool for information generation and then converting that into that human connection. How do you make sure when they have those human like connections over social media, they are connecting with people who are going to give the trusted information? So you're bringing together that strong AI for data gathering. And then when you've got that information, you have to then turn that into human.
It's called an intelligence engine that we're building. So it's super cool because we took a page out of Elon's book and called it AGIS, and it means like anti misinformation. It's a crazy acronym, but it's called AGIS to shield our like because Aegis is a shield, and then it was like it's funny, goofy. It's only when you see it, it's like only a nerd would think of this. Only a person that's watched too much Marvel would have done this. I was like, oh, you grew up watching Fantastic Four. Okay, whatever. Uh, so it's like what we do is that we use the intelligence engine to see the areas that are most in flux. Then from there, I have a way to use the intelligence engine to see what's the highest ranking misinformation and disinformation in that area. Then from there, where the misinformation and disinformation, I see I'm looking for who is giving the misinformation, disinfo, and what are their counterparts, and how is it that we can start educating their counterparts who are being ranked similar in those areas across the subject, right? Not across the subject of what they talk about, which is if I talk about gaming and I put in this point of misinformation, disinfo, how do I find a gamer who is equally valued in this region and educate them on how to put in the facts, right? And also show them, and so now I build a thing to show them this is the fact, right? This is how we found out this is the fact. Here's all already, because part of my job, I have to build trust with them because these are their people, right? I'm asking someone to put their trust, their social capital on the line talking about something that someone might disagree with, right? So part of that is showing them how to do it. So I have this like ages it talks, it does all the cool bells and whistles. I don't type because there's no way, so that makes it no way for me to um, manipulate it based on how I say things, right? And it asks clarifying questions. It's doing all of these things that makes it so that when I am talking to someone who may not understand what I am saying, I can talk to it. It can share exactly the facts, unbiased. It's not weighted to anything, just weighted based upon the facts 100%. And you'd be amazed how that happens, how that organic scoring, how that digital scoring happens to organic scoring, and how that positively impacts like an influencer. It gives them like the courage to talk to people because like, oh, I know this is right because not only did I see it work in action, you showed me everything that I need to know to be able to build trust in this thing. Right. And it's rarity that someone from tech actually sits me down and shows me everything in real time and like how this was built, right? So like that's the how. That is what we're doing. How to target it, how to find it, how to train them, how to really start moving forward and start moving like at a fast clip. Like at my thing is like I just don't move fast, like because I'm in tech, right? But I'm like you can't move fast when you're trying to get involved with people, right? You're trying to build trust with people. That takes time.
What do you define as truth? Because, I mean, as you know, I'm a Star Wars fan, and some of the truths we cling to are different from a certain point of view. But we think about things like tariffs. The truth is, if there is a tariff, that is an import duty paid when the item is imported. That is an indisputable fact. And that means the cost has to be passed on. Well, that cost has to be covered somewhere, whether it's covered by the end consumer, whether it's covered by the importer. That is a fact. Now, are tariffs a good thing or a bad thing? There are plenty of economic examples that show they're a bad thing. There are plenty of examples that show it can be a good thing. We are trying to boost the production of a certain thing in this country. We have it growing. We want to avoid the flood of cheap imports that are going to impact our ability to build thing X. So a tariff can be a good thing. But just generally going, tariffs on everything from country X, that has never in history been shown to be, as far as I'm aware, a good thing. So how do you define that truth? How do you give the people the information to make that decision that I think, based off what I've seen, I think this is of benefit to the country, whereas I think this is not of benefit to.
What you've just said is empirical evidence,
Mhm.
right? So that's like another core component of data, right?
Yeah.
You can use the data of what the example of a tariff is, right? But we have hundreds of years of examples of
Mhm.
what a tariff is,
Yeah.
what looks like a tariff. And then from there, we could be like, okay, so the empirical evidence shows that historically it's not a good thing if it's done in this format. Having a tariff on a certain thing that we are also competitive with is not, that's a good tariff. having a tariff over a thing that not only are we not competitive with, but it's gonna hurt. Like, having a tariff on coffee, like America doesn't grow coffee, right? So uh, having a tariff on countries that do grow coffee beans hurt. It's gonna hurt Dunkin', gonna hurt Starbucks, it's gonna hurt the mom and pop shop. Everybody's gonna feel it. So that
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to have a tariff on that. Having a tariff on, heck, anything that another place can make much cheaper than us, that we aren't also exporting, or we're not building at home and using, that's a bad tariff, right? All we're doing is really hurting the American people, because they're going to use that stuff anyway. It's just going to cost more. It's like, if we lost all of our chickens and we put a tariff on chickens and eggs on like country X, that, or you know what? All the turkeys are gone, and now they
Mhm.
all live in Turkey. And now we put a tariff on turkey for our only. You know what? When you bring turkeys on, we're going to charge you more money on this. We'll put tariffs on this turkey, and it's like, okay, that's going to hurt everybody for Thanksgiving. Every
Mhm.
bodybuilder or every health nut in the world that uses turkey as a weak form of fat, that's going of protein. I'm sorry, is going to be hurt. Everybody
Mhm.
that does turkey bacon, which is not bacon. Everybody. My wife is on this, like, let's use turkey bacon, turkey sausage, and I'm telling her straight up, none of those are things, and you need to stop saying that in public, because those do not exist. Like, the data shows that doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. Like, and
Yes, turkey bacon is misinformation. It is not turkey. It's not bacon.
it is very hilarious how I go from liberal when it comes to most issues to full conservative when it comes to meat. Like, no, this is a thing. This is what I want. Do not give me turkey bacon. I want real bacon. And she's like, dude, you sound like a boomer right now. I'm like, I'll take it. It's fine. But yeah, like that's how we explain it with tariffs. Like, we have to, as a subject, we have to use the empirical data. We're not the first people that have done tariffs. Tariffs is not what's the tariff? What was the tariffs on tea, which caused the Boston Tea Party, right? Like, because that tariff started a war, right? That's part of the things, like, why are we getting taxed on tea like this? And like, which is very hilarious as an American combat veteran talking to you, like, oh no, I just brought up something like, then my cousins across the pond, still pretty salty.
It's all good. It's just part of our global history, and it shows that things like this do cause conflict. Whether the conflict came out where the end result was a good thing or a bad thing, it does cause conflict. So, and for people to say, yeah, these things are good, when, as you say, the empirical data there shows no, it's not. I mean, some folks may argue that yes, the tariff on tea was great for driving towards independence and what have you. And again, that's kind of a
But see, that's subjectivity, right? And you have
viewpoint based off
to,
the data.
yeah, that's where it is. Viewpoint based upon it, like subjectivity based upon viewpoint data. But what we see is that these type of terrorists started a war, right? Or help ignite emotions on war. And then when you look at that, but then look at what America did. All right, but now let's look at more empirical data from history. And you're like, oh, that's not what always happens. You got, the Silk Road with tariffs, and when it came to like silk, when it came to fireworks, gunpowder, how the Portuguese were involved in, stealing things from China, when the Spaniards, all these things that you start seeing from historical data, you're like, oh, tariffs aren't really a good thing. It actually caused a lot more bad things than good. Okay, so how are we doing this so that it doesn't cause a bad thing? And it's like, that's where the answer and the question comes. Like, the more data you provide, and that's part of the beauty of it, right? The more data, the more empirical evidence, the more good questions you get. So the more we can have better conversations that fix things, right? Like, I'm a military veteran, right? And when I hear things come from the military, from DoD, and changes are done, I'm like, oh, so the people from Doge don't really know history, or they don't know data from things, right? Or they do know and they're doing things anyway. Like when I saw the Marines they re-implemented a policy that impacts like facial hair, and being dismissed from the Marine Corps. That a policy that was used to dismiss people from the Marine Corps, and I'm like, that you know targeted minorities more than anyone, because as a black person we have curlier hair, different texture hair that it curls, and it causes, when you do like those 3 blade shaving things, it causes razor bumps. You can't get as clean as a shave as minority as your Caucasian or Asian counterparts, right? So that becomes a problem, because when you look at the data, you see a certain group of people targeted more by a policy that doesn't explicitly say them, but when you look at the empirical evidence, it's like, oh, this does like kind of hurt them more than anyone else, because something that we didn't think about. And then they changed it and took it away. Well, then 2 weeks ago they just brought it back, and I was like, that's bananas. That doesn't make any sense. We already have all the proof. Like, why would we do that? Like, that seems objectively mean. That seems intentional. So, like, that is how you know that's how all this stuff plays in. Like, kids, they don't know that, they don't understand that, so they don't know how to make you know these type of one-to-one correlation. So, like, they don't know that you can't get a Medal of Honor using the accusation of DEI. You got to go through some stuff to get that. You can't do that with a Purple Heart. You can't, like, you have to, the story is being created without empirical evidence or, historical data being implemented as long as AI, right? And uh, just having to be on the forefront of that and be able to share, hey, did you know this is why Jimi Hendrix was on, used to be on the military websites, and why Jackie Robinson used to be on the military websites before they were taken off? A lot of people, they're like, they didn't know Jackie Robinson was Army. I mean, not Jackie Robinson was Army, and Jimi Hendrix was Army, right? So we're having to do this type of thing, like, hey, yeah, Jimi Hendrix was in the military. He actually joined the military at a young age. So, and then he left the military, and that's when he became Jimi Hendrix, right? Just that discipline with the guitar, along with his own creativity and natural talent, is what and that was the biggest selling point to minorities and people of color to joining the military, was like that added level of focus and discipline with your talents can help you bring out the best version of yourself, and being able to show these data points and say, hey, this is how we make our country strong, this is how we make our country better, things like that. Like, it's a very difficult, like, balance, right? Especially when you're so tied into these things. Like, I try to tell people about all the creative veterans that have inspired my work when it comes to software engineering and educating veterans and things like that. And talk about how Bob Ross, and he was in the Air Force, and I talk about uh, Steve. I'm forgetting his name. I can't believe it. Because I'm brain fart because I'm so excited. How I'm thinking, what is the creator of Marvel? Both creators, I'm literally brain farting their names right now, but they were both in the military. The guy that created Superman, he was in the military as well. Like, all these people were in World War II, and they came out with these stories and being able to share these stories in a manner that, for me, changed like my entire like life, and how I looked at the military, and how I looked at veterans, and how I looked at what we could do. And I didn't have to be another grunt style veteran or something like that, where I'm running around and like super short shorts, screaming at people like I'm on major pain or something. Like, I can just be over here screaming Excelsior while making the X-Men and telling stories about how this is how I decided to tell a story about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and share that story to people that may not understand it, by creating mutants, right? Like, that was a brilliant idea that people don't always necessarily look at. And I'm like, that's how I view my work with AI and software engineering and data engineering. How I can tell these stories in a how I can help our country heal and get better by telling these stories and showing this data with influencers in a manner to, make things um, better, right? Just make them more informed, or more informed with more honest information, more trusted information with 18 and 29-year-olds, and target them. And I do have skin in the game because I have three boys who are all in the 18 and 29 demographic, and I'm like, these like I said, I got to make sure these little psychos are not bad people. For if I'm never here again, like if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I got to make sure they're not horrible human beings.
So what you're doing is you're trying to make sure everyone's got that knowledge, and you're not trying to push anyone politically in one direction or the other as such. You're trying to make sure they've got the knowledge, they're educated, and they can make what is an informed decision for them. Yeah, so I think this is a great place to wrap up. We've been talking for a while. This has been absolutely enlightening. I have loved listening to you. Some very, very cool stuff that you're doing. Yeah, and it's just incredible that you are looking at a country as a whole and thinking, how do I fix things? The impact you are having and the rest of the team that you work with is having is going to pay off in spades as people learn more and more about the world they live in, the country they live in, the impact of their decisions, and then they can use that to make, they can use those truthful bits of information to kind of do what they feel is in the best interest. So thank you very much for your time. It's been so great having you on here today.
Thank you for inviting me.